SMX at Unadilla, including clinch scenarios for Jett Lawrence and Haiden Deegan in both classes. Opinions on it all from Ricky Carmichael and what happened with the Jett Lawrence penalty. It's all next on SMX Insider. Yeah, SMX Insider is here. We're the Jasons, Weigandt, and Thomas. It's supposed to be just the preview for round 28 of SMX, which is the legendary Unadilla and Pro Motocross in upstate New York. But JT, we have to look back at a wild weekend at Ironman, which now is going to impact the proceedings at Unadilla because now Chase Sexton has announced after that crazy crash, we got a little clarity from KTM now, that his shoulder hurts and he's out for Pro Motocross. He'll be back for the playoffs. And then there's Hunter Lawrence moving closer, at least to the championship because of his first win. A lot of things happen at Ironman we won't soon forget.
Yeah, there was plenty to talk about as far as crazy things that went on. And then we get this news midweek about Chase Sexton missing the final two rounds. So it just felt like this has been the story of Red Bull KTM and Chase Sexton for a while. It's just another chapter. Thankfully, it sounds like we're going to get him for those pivotal 3 playoff rounds and the Motocross of Nations. But again, when you really think about, and we look down the road, we'll think about how this relationship went. It's just another chapter where things really didn't line up between the rider and the team.
Yeah, that wasn't the only controversial thing that happened over the weekend because, of course, you've all heard about Jett Lawrence being penalized a full lap in the first moto. We'll give you our thoughts on that as this goes on and give the much overdue credit. Now, finally, a 450 Pro Motocross overall winner, Hunter Lawrence, because perseverance paid off for him. So let's get into it in this episode. All right, this is awesome. Our big interview. Long time no see. Our broadcast colleague, Ricky Carmichael, will be back with you on the broadcast when the playoffs of the World Championship begin. It's obviously fun work with you at Monster Energy Supercross. I know you've been watching the races, hanging out all summer. My first question for you, buddy, is we already asked James Stewart his take. 04, he's dominating the 125 class. You're dominating the 250 class. And all we wanted to talk about in the media and as fans are what happens when they race next year. So give me your take on Jett Lawrence dominating one class, Haiden Deegan dominating the other. What was it like for you back then, and maybe what's it like for these guys?
Yeah, I mean, very similar to what Stu said, and I heard that interaction with you guys on the broadcast. First of all, thanks for having me on. But yeah, very similar to what Stu said, and you're just so focused and honed in on where you're going. And when you have that advantage like Stu had, and luckily for me, on the races where you weren't being challenged maybe as much as you were on certain weekends, yeah, absolutely. You're so focused on who you need to beat, what you need to be doing. But outside of the races, Jason, I would say where I was really focused on was the work at home. Like everything that I was doing in the 125 class, I was more prepping for the following year, kind of like what James was saying in a race situation. He was focused on what we were doing, and that's where his mindset was the next year. And mine was the same way. We were very fortunate to have that luxury, but a lot of that was stuff during the week and geared towards where I wanted to be the following year.
Well, thank you for being here, Ricky. And I know you're always sharing these opinions on Title 24. And little known fact, Weege and I talked about changing the name of this to the Title Zero Pod over here, but we decided to stick with SMX Insider for now. But you know, you've been pretty vocal on this Haiden Deegan point about racing this 450 at Budds Creek if he's able to clinch at Unadilla. And I kind of wanted to dive deeper into that because there are very few people that have the context for this in a real life scenario, and you got to live through this of maybe what you could have done differently and what Haiden could learn from that and make a decision beforehand. So please walk us through that.
Yeah, that's a great question, JT. I appreciate you asking. And I think what I said on X, and then it was reposted, I think maybe it could have been taken out of context or taken the wrong way. I was, the way that I learned, and you know this, is, you know, by doing things the wrong way. And for me, I always felt, looking back on my career, if there's one regret or one thing that I would have changed, it would have been racing the opposite coast of Supercross or outdoor the year before. And the reason that I say that is I feel like a guy like Haiden Deegan has enough discipline in his racing, and he's been racing long enough to where he wouldn't put himself in harm's way And when I say that, I mean by taking the bait. Say he gets the whole shot, and him and Jett and Chase and Eli, and it's a four-way battle for the lead. I feel like he wouldn't get caught up in the hype and let that override what the big picture is. Because one thing that you can't replicate is race situations. But I just feel like he would have a lot to gain in paying it forward to 2026.
On that same topic, okay, so yes, you were hoping he's going to race Buds to prepare for Pro Motocross on a 450 next year.
Oh, I don't know that I hope. I was just saying, like, looking back, and maybe it's selfish on my behalf for thinking that way, is like, man, I just putting myself in his shoes, like, dude, if I could go there and race that, knowing what I could have learned, how it's going to work in the race, how this bike is going to work, I just think it would pay off big time. That's
okay, so that would be to learn motocross on the 450 now for next year. Would the same thing apply? Essentially, he's not going to race 450 Supercross until 27 unless he decides to do the opposite coast in 26. So for you, would the same strategy apply potentially?
100%. I would do it 100%. Again, and I go back to, you know, his race IQ, his track IQ also. I feel like he has that discipline, and he's established enough in his career to not take those chances and pull back. I feel like it all starts with the mindset of going to the race, I believe, and like, hey, you got to be super disciplined. Don't do anything you don't feel comfortable doing, and this is a learning opportunity. If the opportunity is there, take it, but if not, you really have to have self-discipline. It just gives you so much knowledge, and you kind of know what to expect. You're not going into it blind like RV and I did. For me, especially in 99, I was a fish out of water, but everyone expecting me to win.
All right, good stuff as always from the GOAT. Thanks for joining us. Again, everybody, Title 24, if you want to hear more from Ricky and Ryan every week. And we'll see you at the races soon, right?
Yeah, that's the plan. I have been enjoying my time and living life and being a normal person. But I'm always plugged in watching you guys. You got 2 more rounds, Dilla and Buds. Keep crushing it. It's been a lot of fun watching the broadcast. Can't wait to see you guys. God willing, I'll be there at round 1 of the SMX playoffs. And again, thanks for having me on SMX Insiders this week.
30-second board, hot topics in the sport. They don't get any hotter, JT, than the penalty that I'm sure everyone watching this show already knows about. Jett Lawrence ended up with a 1-lap penalty for fouling the start in the first moto at Ironman. We did have AMA racing director Mike Pelletier live with us on the broadcast to explain it. Here are his words.
Mike Pelletier for the AMA. We got you.
Hey, guys.
Well, that was a surprise. We have not seen a penalty like this, so it's a 1-lap penalty. Where do you come up with that level of penalty?
Yeah, actually, that is a set penalty in the rule book, so that's not a varying penalty. Jumping or fouling the gate is a set 1-lap penalty.
Okay, so Mike says this is different than, say, Chase Sexton getting stuck in the gate at the Detroit Supercross because Sexton wasn't able to go forward. He was trapped in the gate. Jett, as the AMA sees it, JT, was ahead of the group. And that counts as a jumping or fouling the gate. You can read the rule here. Doing that may result in a penalty of 1 lap or disqualification. So they gave him the 1 lap. If you freeze frame it, it is true that his wheel was ahead of everyone else the moment that gate was on the ground. But he was behind everyone 1 second later, like literally 1 second later. And then the rule, as I just read it there, says may. We may do this, which also to me means we may not. But as Mike described it on the show, and as he told Honda, this is black and white. They have to enforce this penalty. That confuses me to no end.
Yeah, this is a tough one. And I want to be very clear. I think that Mike Pelletier is doing a great job for AMA Pro Racing. I think he is the perfect person to be in this role. And he has progressed them from where I think were some dark times for AMA Pro Racing and some of the rulemaking and processes that we saw. This was a tough one, though, and I don't think that Mike felt like he had an out. Just like you said, I think in his mind, the way he interprets the rule, this was the only outcome, either 1-lap penalty or disqualification. He chose the less punitive of the two, which was 1 lap, and there we go. My issue really comes in with the construction of the rule as Mike interprets it, because I'm just a believer that there needs to be some sort of room for logic, nuance, and common sense in a rule. I don't want people making things up on the fly. That's not really it. But when you have something that is interpreted as this black and white, where there's no wiggle room whatsoever, I just don't think that's going to be a good setup over time. You're going to be put into situations where the penalty is going to be far too severe for what the mistake was. And also in this, there should be some sort of brevity or some sort of in lieu to, I don't think he was trying to gain an advantage. This was a mistake. And I think the rule was made towards someone trying to gain an advantage, someone trying to jump the gate to get in front of everyone to get a better start. That's what I believe the rule was written for. This was not that. So we are penalizing someone for something that they weren't intentionally trying to do. And back to the prior point, intent, I believe, should be a factor in any ruling like this. And the way the rule is constructed, there is no place to consider nuance, intent, or anything otherwise. Mike felt like this is what he had to do. This is what the penalty was done. I can tell you, in speaking to people at Honda, riders, mechanics, Lars Lindstrom, they could not disagree with this ruling any more strongly humanly possible on any planet. You could not disagree with this ruling anymore. And it's a really tough thing because Jett Lawrence got punished for something he had already been punished by himself for. Starting 23rd, when you're a historically top 3 starter, is already a big punishment in and amongst itself, let alone adding what came to be a 125-second penalty on top of it.
And unfortunately, does it somewhat overshadow the first win here for Hunter Lawrence? A mixed day for Honda because they're not happy about this rule, but they also benefit because Hunter finally got a win. I think the good thing, JT, maybe you agree with me on this, Hunter has ridden so well for so long on the 450 that it's not an asterisk-style win, even though it actually kind of is.
Yeah, I think this was inevitable. You know, we had been wondering, hey, when was this going to come? He's been so close for so long. And sometimes things just go your way. You know, there are so many times in life when things just work against you. The math doesn't happen. Look at Chase Sexton in the second moto with the front brake issue. Like, these things tend to happen. So when things go your way, and maybe necessarily Hunter Lawrence wasn't the fastest guy on the day, that's okay. Don't be discouraged because you got a win in an unorthodox way. So congrats to Hunter Lawrence. I think whether you want to say he necessarily deserved it on this day or not, that's for, you know, the viewer to decide. I'm just saying, when you put yourself in good position for long enough and you continue to get the start, and you continue to ride this fast, eventually it's going to happen. Just ask Phil Nicoletti.
Yes, that's right. Our guy Filthy Phil, after we exhausted ourselves with retirement parties at the end of SMX last year, decides to race motocross in Canada this summer and ends up winning the Canadian national title without winning an overall because everybody else was crashing and having mechanical problems all over. So credit to you, Phil, but we're not getting our money back for the retirement parties. I mean, you got a bonus and you pay us back. This feels different to me a little bit than JT. How many memorable Matt Gerke going like 9-1 to win one race ever in his career at this level? This is not that. This isn't a 10th place guy who everything broke one weekend and he won. This is a guy who's on the podium every week and is inches away from a win. So full marks to Hunter Lawrence. Well done. And it doesn't affect the championship too much. But to my earlier point, I think everybody's lucky that it doesn't, because Jett Lawrence is still in position to clinch the title this weekend. Our statistician Clinton will tell us more about that later. Haiden Deegan put himself back in position to clinch this weekend, so might still have number 1 place at Unadilla.
We might, but just to touch on that point you made, it probably won't affect the outcome of this Pro Motocross Championship, but it could affect the seeding. It could affect the battle between Chase Sexton and Jett Lawrence for seeding going into the Supermotocross World Championship playoff. That is a real thing, one way or another. You could say Chase crashed out of the second moto, fine. You could say Jett lost points, but if you gave Jett those points back, now we're at what, 12 going into the last 2 rounds? That's a big deal. So it's another thing to think about. But at Unadilla, we may be handing out number 1 plates again, and this would be the second time in 3 years that Jett Lawrence would win a 450 Pro Motocross Championship at Unadilla. And that's saying something. This is really early. This would be twice that he's done it early.
And it goes back to that earlier theme we've had where the racing's been good this summer, but it's also been somewhat of this appetizer dress rehearsal of, Deegan dominating one class, Jett dominating the other. What happens when they're in the same class? We've been talking about this a lot, and we did earlier with RC. The track at Unadilla, a favorite of Carmichael, as a matter of fact, JT, and maybe you. Give us a little tour of Unadilla.
Well, your comment is dripping with sarcasm there, but I will give the Robinson family here credit for improving this racetrack because I raced it in some of, I would say, the worst years in its history. The dirt was gone. We were down to the bedrock. It was arguably one of the most hated racetracks on the circuit, and now it has come full circle and riders actually enjoy it again, but that is because of the efforts to bring dirt back in. There's loam, there's topsoil, there's traction, there's line choice, there's ruts, and that just adds to the lore of what Unadilla is. The layout's always been fantastic, but the soil composition has really been the story over the last decade plus, and I think it's really climbed the ranks again as far as which tracks that riders prefer to go to, and some they're just kind of looking to get through the end of the day.
Yeah, I bet you James Stewart has some thoughts on Unadilla, but again, it's better now than it probably was a lot of the years he was racing it. Let's hear more from James with our statistician, Mr. Clinton Fowler. Tom for the Inside Line.
Thanks, Jay. What's up, guys? You know who it is, your boy here, and I'm joined with my co-host, Mr. Clinton Fowler, from the Inside Line. All right, Clinton, let's break it down for the people on the Insider. Let's go head to head. You know my favorite part. We got
some fun ones this week, James. Head to head, Hunter Lawrence versus Jett Lawrence. They're favoring Jett Lawrence. They got him in as a minus 245, paying out $28. Hunter up plus 178, paying out just over $55. The next one, Justin Cooper versus RJ Hampshire. Home race for Justin Cooper. He's not favored. He's at a plus 141, paying out $48. RJ Hampshire minus 190, paying out 30. So interesting one there. And then Jorge Prado versus Justin Barcia. We talked about this one last week. They got Barcia, also a home race for him, at a minus 160, paying out $32. Jorge Prado plus 120, paying out 44. James, what do you see here?
You know the old LL Cool J song, Mama Said Knock You Out? Well, I'm leaning towards that with Jett Lawrence. Mama said knock him out. I'm leaning brother on brother crime, Jett Lawrence over Hunter Lawrence. I think he's upset. Plus, he wants to go out with a 1-1. What's a better way to wrap up a championship? So Jett Lawrence on that one. RJ, look, RJ's been getting better all year long. Coming in the season, we didn't know how he was, but now we know how he is. He's doing pretty good. Got his first ever podium. So Justin Cooper is still laying up in Millville. He was laying out on the ground. So just happy to him to be up. Plus, he has that #1 seed. I'm leaning towards RJ. Now, this one, the fun part. Last weekend, I was on Justin Barcia. I felt like, look, he was going to relapse. Somebody was going to leave it inside open. He was going to go for the front end. Didn't happen. He rode good. But Mr. Jorge Prado found them shoes. So even this weekend, I'm leaning towards Jorge. Not because of, look, is he way better than Justin? No, I think those guys are pretty good. But because of what Jorge said, he was looking forward to going to this weekend. First time I heard him say that about the Kawasaki all year long. So, look, Daddy done found his shoes. Jorge Prado over Justin Barcia. So those are my picks. As always, people, things change. Just like Chase Sexton, get well soon, son. He's out, but I'm looking forward to Unadilla, and I know you are, Clinton. All right, Jay, back to you.
All right, thanks, gentlemen. Welcome back. Deegan 450. You see that headline on the screen. Don't get too excited. I know you might be thinking we're talking about if he clinches the title at Unadilla, will he race a 450 at Budds Creek? I've been told by multiple sources that is not going to happen. I was a source that said it was, because Bobby Regan, the team owner, said that was going to happen. I think that was some of Bobby's mental, motivating, mind game tricks that he likes to play on his riders. Maybe it worked. Deegan went 1-1 at Ironman. But we do know this, JT. He will race a 450 next summer in Pro Motocross. They made the contract official. That's the news everyone wants to hear.
Well, I would say you don't get too excited. You're the one that broke this story and had the internet blaze with him possibly racing at Budds Creek. But in the end, credit to Brian. He's doing exactly what they said they would do. They would continue to learn, and they really wanted to go after the likes of Jett and Chase and Hunter and Tomac in 2026 in motocross, where Haiden is most comfortable. That's been the plan since I was there speaking with them last November of 2024. So I give them credit for sticking to that plan. I do think that this is the best course of action for Haiden. I think you go when you're ready. You don't try to front run the system, because he's going to run into a real challenge when you have to face the likes of Chase and Jett and these guys in mid-season form. That's not what you want to do. You don't want to kind of set yourself up for a bad situation. And I've heard people say, well, there won't be any expectation for Haiden because they know he's not really ready. That's not the world that Haiden Deegan lives in.
No.
Simply not. They have created a microscope for him to exist under, everything he does will be examined to the nth degree, and it would be the same case if he rode a 450 at Budds Creek.
Another guy with a little less fanfare moved to the 450 class this year, and we've tried our best to talk about him a lot, but we're still not talking about him enough. This is RJ Hampshire. JT, we said that the win for Hunter Lawrence was inevitable. I feel like the podium for RJ was inevitable.
Inevitable, yes, but still crazy unexpected if you just go back a couple of months. He has overperformed at every turn, and it doesn't really seem to matter if he's passing Jorge Prado or now he's battling and passing Eli Tomac, who we have to say was under the weather. We didn't, we weren't really sharing that news at the time, and he was transparent after the race. But in any case, RJ can't control any of that. He can only race who's out there, who lines up on Saturdays. And I have to say, he's been one of the bright spots of this pro motocross summer.
Let's go to WMX. This was awesome. We knew that we would get them back on Saturday at Ironman. We waited a couple months for them to have another round, and it was good racing. But Lachlan Turner, I still feel like there's still a little bit of a cliffhanger here. She dominates. We wanted to see her battle Charlie Cannon. Cannon had a flat tire, I guess, in that second moto. So the saga continues, I guess, into the final two races.
It does, but we have to give a nod to Lala Turner here. She has been absolutely lights out. She went in, she dominated Loretta's with a 1-1-1, which she said had been her dream for years. And then she backed that up because myself and many other people were looking at a fully healthy Charlie Cannon coming in looking for some payback. Like, Charlie wanted to be in the fight. She wanted to go out and try to win. And, flat tire or not, the first moto spoke for itself. And then the second moto, Lala did everything that she could do. We can say the same thing about the 450 Pro Motocross class. You can only race the people that are in the race under the given circumstances, and that's the case for Lala too, and she has performed at every turn here. So kudos to her. I hope we get the fight and the battle that we're looking for, but so far, it has been the summer of Lala.
4 motos to go there. Again, Unadilla and Budds. WMX will be racing. Budds, they'll be back to the Saturday afternoon program midway through the day. That'll be for their final moto of the year. Hey, I was in the pits Saturday morning at Ironman. I always steal breakfast and coffee, hat tip, from the HEP Suzuki team. I get fed every weekend.
Shocking.
And then they casually mentioned one of the guys was a road warrior. One mechanic had to drive a box van from California to Ironman. And I'm like, why? And they're like, well, we needed an extra bike. And I'm like, why? And then they scurried away and ran. I believe there was a Ken Roczen bike in that box van, and they had to get it in the semi. Now Roczen has announced, just like that, he's back. He's back for Unadilla.
No, this is great. And I think if you're looking at the SuperMotocross World Championship playoffs, how does it set up best for Ken Roczen to get a couple gate drops, knock the rust off a little bit? Unadilla is the perfect setup because typically the temperature's a little cooler, which will help Kenny getting back to form. And this racetrack has been one that's been really good to Kenny. I think his technique really shows up. His low RPM riding style works at Unadilla. And I think he has a lot of confidence at this particular racetrack. So you want to come in, have a good weekend, and whether he races Budds Creek or not, we shall see. But I think this is a great opportunity for him to kind of gauge himself before we get to Concord, North Carolina, get those laps in, and where he can be 100% and ready to rip when we get to that first playoff round.
I'll make sure to get the full update on Kenny's health when I'm making a breakfast burrito in the rig Saturday morning at Unadilla. All right, let's talk to Dr. Joe. Okay, as promised, here is Dr. Joe McGinley. It is time for the medical update. Some new procedures that I didn't even know, some of them not even quite being used yet. Every week we seem to talk, Dr. Joe, about athletes and racers coming back earlier than expected, and then some new stuff on the horizon that might even shorten those times more.
Yeah, it's great to see the advancements in the technologies and procedures that are available to the athletes when they're injured. Some of the basic stuff, if you had an ACL tear 20 years ago, you're probably looking at an open surgery. So a big scar, long recovery time, long healing time. That has now transitioned almost fully to arthroscopic surgery. So they go in with a small scope, less scar tissue, less invasive. That's probably the biggest improvement we've seen over the last few decades. The other thing that we're seeing a difference in is the graft material they're using. So the types of grafts, how the grafts are procured, and what they're actually using has also improved over that time period. In addition to that, they're looking at now stabilizing the anatomy. So trying to mimic the anatomy similar to what we naturally have in the joint. So how they do these ACL reconstructions and then how they stabilize the joint in particular.
I've been in this spot, gotten hurt, go see the doctor, great people like yourself. And the first question that every rider has, when can I ride again? It's universal. That's going to be the first question. So in real terms, all these, steps forward in medical innovation, what are we talking about? Like how much an improvement in recovery time do you guess we're talking about for some of this stuff?
Yeah, that's a tough question, JT. That's actually going to be very, very specific to the surgeon and what type of procedure they're doing and what their comfort level is. It's also going to be sports specific. We touched on this previously with, say NFL versus motocross. There's different stresses on the joints. There's different types of bracing. There's different requirements on getting back to the sport. So we're seeing the return sooner in motocross. I know some of the guys, they're getting on turn tracks 3-4 months out, sometimes even sooner after an ACL reconstruction, where that previously was unheard of. It's definitely going to be surgeon specific and it's going to be technique specific, but across the board, those numbers are being reduced no matter which way you look at that.
Real quick, I know you talked to your guy, Jerry Robin, who was riding for your McGinley support program as a privateer. What's the latest on Jerry?
Yeah, I spoke to Jerry this past week. First, his spirits are great. I mean, he's making incredible progress. Really cool thing, he already has his car modified and he's driving. So, at this stage, being able to drive and have that ability to drive, that's wonderful. But he's starting to get some delayed responses in his toe. So he posted a video of this online. It's really cool to see. So I called him and said, was this just a reflex response or was this intentional? He said, no, it was intentional. He was thinking moving his toe, and then it was like a bit delayed, a few seconds later, and then his toe moved. So that was really cool to see that progress early. But he's making incredible progress. He's already modified his house to make it accessible. He is driving. He's getting back out there. And like I said, most importantly, his goal is to improve as much as he possibly can. And that's what he's focusing on. Yes, he has his down days, but he's always focusing on moving forward and doing the best he can to get back out there. I did speak to him. He's tentatively planning to show up at the Las Vegas round for the SMX final. Hopefully we see him out there. If I get confirmation on that, I'll let you guys know. But he's working on actually showing up in person for the last round of the season this year.
Awesome. That's great to hear. Get well soon, as well as you can, Jerry. And thanks for the update, Dr. Joe.
Thank you.
Okay, I can't believe this topic is this far down the list, but that's how crazy it was at Ironman, and that's how pumped we are for Unadilla. Team USA for the Motocross of Nations was announced as part of opening ceremonies at Ironman, and I think it's the team that everyone wanted. This is a powerhouse trio. You got Eli Tomac, Chase Sexton, and finally Haiden Deegan on the 250. Haiden Deegan at Ironman on a 250. I mean, I think he's going to go for a moto win or two against the big bikes. That seems like such a Deegan thing to aim for, but at least on paper, great team.
It is, and I have kind of carried this philosophy that win or lose, if you take your best team and you go out and compete, that's all there is to it. And there have been so many years where just complications have gotten in the way. Team changes, scheduling. We now have a 31 race schedule, which makes it just a difficult ask for riders to then pack up, fly to Europe with their team and families and everything and add another event. But this year, thankfully, I believe we have the best team on paper. We have the best 250 pro motocross rider, I would say, in the world in Haiden Deegan. And we have our best Americans in the championship of Eli Tomac and Chase Sexton, who were both on the winning team in 2022. So win, lose, or draw, we have the best team we could possibly have. And anytime you're going to offer that up to, I think, the American fans, you're going to be applauded for it. So let's get it on.
We go to the SMX playoff schedule that they will have to compete first. I laugh, by the way, when I hear this. There used to be a complaint there were too many weeks between the end of Pro Motocross and Motocross of Nations. Well, they don't have that complaint anymore. We just roll right into it. You can see the dates here. It is September 6th, the first playoff round, ZMAX Dragway at Charlotte. Then September 13th, going to the Dome in St. Louis. And then the World Championship in Las Vegas, September 20th. And this time of year, JT, you start hearing riders and teams talking about seeding, playoffs, getting back on a Supercross track, building a hybrid track. They're all starting to figure out how this works.
They are, and we heard that from Washougal. Chase Sexton mentioned that he was going to be putting in some SMX hybrid track laps. Jorge Prado seemed like he spent the entire time riding Supercross in preparation. He maybe had his best day of the year at Ironman. So it is a new thing. It's a nuance. We would never hear about riders putting in Supercross laps or anything close in the month of August, but that is the change that we are under now. And as far as the schedule goes, be careful what you wish for, because if you ask for more races, you're probably going to get it.
Yeah, it's been fun to watch. Absolutely, these last couple rounds, and we mentioned seeding and how important all that is. And then we have the 2-day format at 2 of the 3 rounds. So there at Charlotte and the finale in Vegas, got the full Friday schedule. So fans can come on in. There's autograph sessions as there normally would be on Saturday, but also on Friday, there's a pre-race press conference. Fans can not only attend, but we usually pass a microphone around and take a few audience questions. There'll be practice sessions, pit bike racing in between the practice sessions, and our own SMX Insider show live for the fans Friday evening. So lots to do on Friday. Honestly, if you go to a pro motocross race, there's some stuff happening Friday anyway. So why not just really make a splash out of it, which is what happens at these races.
Yeah, this is awesome. My favorite aspect of this is getting to do basically what it essentially is a live podcast with the SMX Insider Live. You and I get to host it. We get stars of the sport, guys like Ricky Carmichael and James Stewart, other media outlets come in and join, and we get to hear their ridiculous takes on the sport. So it's a real questions from the audience. So if you've never been, you should definitely make an attempt to show up at rounds 1 and 3 on Friday and join in. It truly is an interactive experience where you don't get to do things like that. In other sports, you do Colin Cowherd or Michael Wilbon or whoever you want to talk to, and you get to hear, not to mention guys like Ricky Carmichael and James Stewart.
Yeah, and at the press or Chase Sexton or Haiden Deegan, that's $2 less doing it. This is my favorite part of the show. I get to talk saving money. It's a $10 discount right now on SMX tickets. But when I say right now, this will expire after Budds Creek. So you got to buy your tickets here in the next 2-week span. Just go to supermotocross.com. That's where you get your tickets. We'll give you $10 off of up to 8 tickets. You can save $80 if you're bringing your whole crew. And the code is SMX5TV. Type that in, SMX the number 5TV, and save some money. That's my favorite thing. And also on the topic of saving money, international viewers, if you are not a subscriber to the SMX Video Pass yet, sign up now. And these final 5 races, an 80% discount, because most of the season is already gone. So if you're a viewer from overseas, it's super cheap. So you might as well dial us in. Okay, SMX Facts time. We bring in the statistician, Clinton Fowler. Clinton, JT, and I hit on this briefly toward the top of the show. Potentially both titles could be clinched this weekend at Unadilla.
Yeah, it looks like we're here for Championship Saturday. Should be some amazing racing. In the 450s, Jett Lawrence just needs 3 points to clinch the title. Technically, there's 3 other riders in contention: Hunter Lawrence, Eli Tomac, and Justin Cooper, JT. But Eli Tomac and Justin Cooper are pretty far back and don't look like they're in contention. 3 points isn't a lot, JT, but man, 2 motos, anything can happen, just what we saw last week.
It can, and my mind goes to what Jett Lawrence would have to do to that starting gate for him to not get 3 points this weekend. That's immediately where I went. But yeah, it feels like this is going to be the second time in 3 years that Jett is handed a number 1 plate at Unadilla. And honestly, when you look at his body of work over this summer, rightfully so, he has been outstanding.
And then the margin is actually a little better for Deegan, right?
Yeah, Deegan actually has a little bit more control here. He's got a 51-point lead over Joe Shimoda. He could lose 1 point, so he could technically go 2-2. Joe Shimoda could go 1-3, and he clinches the title. But again, anything happens, especially when we're in a place like Unadilla, I think, as you guys were talking about. And Joe Shimoda has shown, JT, an ability to actually beat Haiden Deegan pretty straight up.
Yeah, and this is a good track for Joe. And let's factor in, he did hurt himself at this race a year ago. But I think historically, it's a track that works well for him in the ways that we talk about. Ken Roczen rides well here. Dylan Ferrandis rides well here. I think that fits for Joe. Riding style, RPM levels, the way they carry momentum all seem to work in the favor of Joe Shimoda. And now the question is, can he take that to the race and take it to Haiden Deegan, who looks to be back to 100% form?
Yeah, our next stat, this surprised me. So we've been talking quite a bit. If Deegan wins out here, wins these final 3 races, he's got 1 of 3 down, he would go ahead of Jett Lawrence on the all-time 250 motocross national wins list. this other one, this Yamaha stat, I did not know about this. Explain this.
Yeah, I mean, we obviously beating Jett, I think, would be enough motivation for Haiden, but here's another one. Haiden could be the winningest small bike Yamaha rider in the history of pro motocross. He's got 13 wins. Brock Glover and Jeremy Martin have 14 wins. So a win this weekend ties him with those guys for the winningest pro motocross Yamaha small bike rider. And if he then won in Budds Creek, he would take #1 spot. So pretty cool. Just added motivation, JT, for a guy like Haiden Deegan to go out there and win.
Yeah, I think Haiden really likes these records. He wants to kind of vault himself into that historic category because when you get up here, there's ego involved, there's legacy involved, and I think he's looking around going, hey, I have done some pretty historic things in this 250 class as I'm about to exit it, and those should be noted. So, there's a championship on the line, there's the racing in itself. He wants to win Unadilla, but these records and these stats do matter, I think, to riders like Haiden and Jett and all the riders of this category or caliber.
Yeah, what I love about it in the small bike classes, they know it ends. They know they're leaving, and they're not going to probably come back and get more. The 450s, it's always like, well, I'll win 5 more next year or the next year, the next year. That doesn't usually happen. But in this case, Haiden knows he's only got 2 more 250 pro motocross races in his career to get these stats. And then he's got to move to the 450s like the previous champion, Hunter Lawrence, did. We also visited this earlier in the show, how impressive his consistency has been. Give us some numbers on this win and what he's done before that.
Yeah, we talk about consistency. 20 races into his 450 career, they've all been top 5, so that's pretty impressive. But the overall win is where I really go, and that overall win, he's one of 4 riders to have been on the podium 10 plus times before getting it. Kind of an illustrious, he's probably pretty happy to no longer be sitting on that podium, not at the top. And you look at it, you think about it, you look at this list, Chad Reed is up there with 27 podiums before he got that. Now, JT, I think the big difference here when I look at these other 3 riders, these other 3 riders took 4 or 5 years, in the case of Jason Anderson, 8 seasons to get that overall win. Hunter Lawrence has done so in his sophomore season, so he seems like a contender and is going to be here, especially as we come up on SMX championships.
It does, and this feels like who Hunter is as a person. The way he approaches his racing is playing out in the results column, right? Never too high, never too low, always there, just kind of relentless, figuring things out. And I compared him to like a velociraptor where he's always just angling, he's figuring the situation out, he's always learning, and the next time he shows up, he's going to be just maybe 0.5% better than he was the last time you saw him. And to see him finally get this win, we talked about it being inevitable, just kind of how it felt, because if you're continually getting better and you're learning, which he is doing every single time out, he'll learn something about where he could have been better. Eventually things are going to go your way and he's going to get this win. So again, kudos to Hunter, and this just feels like the way it was supposed to go for him.
Funny to see that 27 races took for Chad Reed to get a win, or 27 times on the podium before one of them was a win. But he was stuck racing against James Stewart and the winningest rider ever, Ricky Carmichael, a lot. But if you're Hunter, you're going to say, I had to race Chase Sexton and I had to race my brother, and they're really good too. So I don't know, Clinton, there's no way to quantify that part.
Nope, it's tough. And you know what? Jett Lawrence and Chase Sexton, we may be talking about them in the future as some of the top 5, 10 all-time riders as well. So it might end up being the same comparison for Reedy.
That's right. All right. Thanks for the stats, man.
Thanks, guys.
Okay, just about ready to wrap up this episode of SMX Insider. I'll tell you where, when, and how you can watch the broadcast over the weekend. Everything will stream live on Peacock or that 80% off SMX Video Pass if you're outside the United States. Race day live at 10 o'clock Eastern Time Saturday morning. That's an hour of qualifying coverage. And the motos, as always, start at 1 o'clock. We'll have a halftime show. We'll have a live post-race show. JT, here's the thing about Unadilla. It's all about the highs and the lows. When I first started hearing about this track and then even going there, the story was that Bob Hanna was the fastest guy and he would always have bad luck. And I feel like that's always been woven into the fabric of Unadilla. Great things, but also Heartbreak Hill in a way. So you really never know when the gates drop there what's going to happen.
Well, I think that's in a microcosm what this series has been all the time. We don't know, every time we think we know exactly what's to come, we get thrown a curveball, whether it's Haiden Deegan at Redbud or Jett Lawrence with gate malfunctions or Chase Sexton crashing because his front brake had a problem. You just never know what's going to happen. So I can't imagine why Unadilla would be any different.
All right. Stay tuned for the predictably unpredictable. That'll be this weekend. We'll see everybody at Unadilla.